Hi, and welcome to another episode of Seasoned Artists, where we bring in a variety of artists that have been put to the test of time, where they come on and share their wisdom, their knowledge, and especially their artwork with us. We're especially excited and thrilled to have with us today the artist, Mr. James Threalkill. Thank you so much for being here.
Barry, thanks for having me. You just tapped into my childhood nickname, Thrill, so that's pretty cool.
I can understand that. Let's see, and just look at some of your other bio here. James is an Emmy Award-winning visual artist in painting, pottery, murals, batik, and book illustrations. His experience includes international exhibitions and special projects devoted to individual and extensive knowledge in the fine arts area as it relates to visual media and culture. A graduate of George Peabody College from Vanderbilt University, where he received a Bachelor of Science degree in Fine Arts. James has won numerous awards and has also served as executive director of the 100 Black Men of Middle Tennessee. That's a little bit of work over the years there.
Yeah, quite a bit. And a lot of it I contribute to Nashville being a little slow for artists to pursue full-time work as artists. And so I had a technique of working jobs to supplement my interest in art. But all along, I continued to develop my art with the intention of one day having the privilege of working full-time as an artist, which I'm doing now.
Right, wonderful. Let's go back to the beginning then. So you grew up in East Nashville, is that right?
Well, initially I grew up in South Nashville in the J.C. Napier public housing community, and I was attending Napier Elementary School when my first grade teacher contacted my mother and said, "Miss Threalkill, this young man is drawing in class all day. I'm pretty sure he's going to be an artist." And so, my mother said, "Well, you have to do your schoolwork," but she took that to use as encouragement for me as an artist. So she enrolled me in art classes and bought me all kind of art supplies and just let me know that it was a special skill. So I always credit her for being my biggest fan in terms of helping me to understand what a special skill it was.
Nice. Did you have some teachers that come to your mind, either from public schools or other art teaching that stand out that got you started?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I had incredible teachers all along my educational journey. My third grade teacher did a school play, and she had students to play characters based on what she knew they were interested in. And so, of course, she said, "James, I want you to play the artist Henry O. Tanner, and you have to go do research on him and find out who he was." So I couldn't go to the internet, so I had to go get an encyclopedia off the shelf and find out who he was. But to my surprise, it was the first African-American artist that I had become aware of. And he's the artist that did the painting of the young boy sitting on his lap called The Banjo Lesson. He's really famous for that particular work. But the thing that impacted me was the style, the realism that he painted with. And I subsequently discovered Michelangelo, the incredible sculptor who was forced to paint the Sistine Chapel, and it ended up being one of the most incredible pieces of work in the history of art. And then Norman Rockwell, again, another artist based on the style of realism that really just influenced my emphasis on realism today with my art.
Right, and did you go through some different phases? I mean, today you do acrylics and mostly with a palette knife, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Tell us how you maybe got to that.
Well, when I turned 13, my mother bought me my first oil painting set. And so she gave me the opportunity to learn the medium and to grow up with it. But I had great teachers like Mr. Thomas, my sixth grade teacher, who I still talk to today. He's 88 years old. Incredible influence on my life. Wilbert Smith, another artist who taught me the technical part of art and making sure that when you're lettering and doing things like that, he said, "Don't do any lettering without making lines." And I'm working on a project now where I'm using lines. I said, Mr. Smith's advice is still working to this day. And so those teachers were incredible. So I started out painting with oil paints, and that particular style was brushwork. But as I evolved as an artist, one of the things that I try to do is to constantly look at ways at growing and challenging myself. And so after becoming pretty well known for the style of painting with the brush, I was in my studio one day and said, let me try something different. And the palette knife gave me the opportunity to take acrylic paint, which I hadn't used before, and start getting textured surfaces that really started to amaze people when they saw them in exhibits. And so
Right.
The change in style was so well received that I kind of switched to that particular mode of painting. Although I still can take on commission projects where I'm using the brush and that kind of thing. And so going back and forth like that kind of helps me stay fresh with my technique. And then I do, a lot of portrait work and different things like that. So the great thing about art is that it gives you a variety of approaches to take and styles to pursue. In between some of my realism projects, I'll do abstract paintings and have just as much of a challenge in coming up with an aesthetic composition as I do in trying to paint something tangible.
There's an incredible use of color that just stands out with the majority of your work, or at least the latest stuff. I mean, what goes through your mind? Is there something that triggers what the color is, or what are you feeling, or what brings out all that color?
Absolutely, great question. Typically, you have certain colors that are associated with whether you're doing a person's face, skin tones, and different things like that. And so what I started to do was take non-traditional colors and use them in places where people typically didn't see them used. And so they started making these incredible metallic acrylic colors and these real vibrant fluorescents and other colors. And so I said, let me not just have a planned approach to painting something. Let me just put some colors out and spontaneously scoop up some color and add it to the composition. And that's the fun part of it, is that you're not following a script. It's more like a jazz musician with his improvisation, which is why I enjoy painting jazz musicians, because you're capturing that spontaneity on stage as they create with their instrument. And so my approach to painting is very similar to the composing. I'm just grabbing color and putting it in, and it just ends up being fascinating to see how the final product turns out.
You mentioned the jazz musicians. It seems you do have some favorite topics, like the musicians, and even a dance series and some others. I mean, can you speak to some things that you've, some of the themes that have spoken to you?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in a musical family. My dad sung in a gospel group, and then my mother always played music. I mean, Motown and all of those great artists that represented the Motown and the Philadelphia sound and that type of thing. So we were surrounded by music. And so I've always been impressed and fascinated with musicians. I still say to this day, I'm gonna learn how to play the bass guitar, my favorite instrument. But the instrument and the musician is something that's really fascinating to capture, because that relationship between the musician and his instrument, and then the sound that he's creating, is really something that comes across well in terms of subject matter.
Just quickly then, I think I've seen where you have some philosophy of your art with hope and whatnot. Is there something behind, is there a philosophy that you can kind of bring together for us about behind your art?
Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned in studying art history and all the other subjects that I looked at through art, we look at civilizations of the past to determine what the conditions were like back then. And a lot of times we look at the art to kind of explain what the social conditions were like at that time and other things about that particular era. So as an artist, I feel like I have a responsibility to create images that uplift, that inspire, that encourage. And, I taught for years at a community center where youth were living in the same public housing community I grew up in. So I wanted to make sure that even when I painted them on the playground, looking through a fence or other things like that, it gave them some hope of encouragement and that they can achieve something successful by putting their skills and talents to use. And so I want my images, if people are looking at them 100 years from now, to see that I tried to create images that inspired people and motivated them to do their absolute best.
Right, wonderful. And there's so much more we could talk about, but we want you to be able to show us some of what you do, because what is it you're going to be doing for us today?
I'm going to do a palette knife painting of a jazz musician. And so one of my favorite subjects is to capture musicians with that instrument. So that's what I'm going to do today.
Great. I know there's so much more that you've done you can share. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about your travels and some of the other exciting things you've done with art.
Yes.
But first, let's take this commercial break.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call now.
Hi, folks. Medicare Part C plans with extra benefits like getting money added back to your Social Security check may now be available to you in your zip code. Make sure you're not missing out. It's simple. 1, call the number on your screen. 2, they'll look up your zip code and see if you're eligible. 3, they'll check for plans with extra benefits like prescriptions, dental coverage, and the benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every single month. Call now.
I called to get everything I deserve.
I called to check my zip code for a plan with a benefit that adds money back to my Social Security check.
I called to check my zip code.
Millions of people have called the Medicare Coverage Helpline. Call, check your zip code, see if you're eligible, and get what you deserve. Call now.
Call 1-800-244-9808. That's 1-800-244-9808 now.
Taking a trip in the next 12 months? Airlines are under tremendous pressure and they're practically giving away their unsold seats. Like every crisis, this one will end too. But right now is the best time to take advantage of giveaway ticket prices on their unsold seats. We're not allowed to publish these low fares online. The only way to get these rock bottom giveaway prices is to call. So phone Low Cost Airlines now for airline ticket prices you may never see again.
Welcome back. And we have Mr. Thrill himself here in the studio, James Threalkill, talking to us. And it seems you've got to do some wonderful, incredible things. I've heard you talk in the past that you've been able to do because of your art. People you've met, places you've been. I wonder if you might kind of talk to that a little bit.
Absolutely. And, you know, I feel very blessed to be an artist because it's just a great skill to be able to utilize not only to teach, but also to impact people. And so I wondered how I was going to go to college being the oldest of 6. And fortunately, I started playing sports and ended up playing football at Vanderbilt, where I majored in art. But, you know, as I started to move forward in my art career, people began to notice some of the types of work that I was doing. One was a painting that I did of Nelson Mandela after he was released from prison. And it just so happened that Warner Brothers Records was doing a project where they were bringing together South African and American musicians to record some freedom songs after the end of apartheid. And so someone saw the painting I had done of Mandela and invited me to go to South Africa and to ultimately do the album cover for that particular project. And so while in South Africa, I was there for a month. And I was traveling back from Johannesburg to Soweto, working with students in Soweto to paint a mural that captured people like Bishop Tutu and Miriam Makeba and Nelson Mandela. And it just so happened that one day in Soweto, Mandela was coming back to Soweto for the first time since becoming president. And so the producer of the album was a bass player, again, my favorite instrument, and he was going to be playing at this concert to celebrate Mandela. So when we got to this venue, there was this sea of people, and he said, there's Mandela sitting on stage. So we sat 4 rows back from Nelson Mandela. And so I had done a painting and took a picture of it. And Ray Peary, who worked with Paul Simon on the Graceland project, he said, James, go show Mandela the painting you did. And there was an empty chair behind Nelson Mandela. So I went and sat behind Nelson Mandela and tapped him on the shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just turned around like that and turned back around. I got up and came back to my seat and said, oh my goodness, I've insulted the president of the country. So when the band stopped playing, he said something to these 2 bodyguards who are bigger than I am, and they started looking around, and then they pointed at me and started coming back toward me. So I told my group, I'm probably getting ready to get the South African necktie right now, so let me say my goodbyes. So they came and said, the president will see you now. And so I went back and sat in that seat, and President Mandela said, it would have been rude to talk while the band was playing, but now that they have stopped, I will speak with you. And I told him why we were over there and that we were donating the proceeds to the students at the community center. We're going to hang the mural in the church where he and Steve Biko first started planning the freedom meetings. But just to meet one of the most incredible individuals in the history of mankind was something that I'll never forget. I've traveled to South America to do murals throughout the city of Medellin and the country, and was invited back by the U.S. Embassy in Bogota to lecture and do murals. And I've done exhibits in London and Sweden. And so when I think about, here an artist from the public housing community who had a great teacher who recognized my talent and where it ultimately took me, I tell students all the time, you never know where your skills are going to take you.
Right. And it's a blessing to go out to all the teachers out there that whole saying of you never know
Absolutely.
What effect you're going to have on people.
Absolutely.
That's
They
incredible.
are priceless.
Yes. And we want to see some of your work in action. But first, let's take this quick commercial break, and I'll get my crayon and coloring book out and get ready to do my art, because that's what I do.
Right.
But after this commercial break, we'll head over to Studio B and see Mr. James Threalkill in action.
Sounds good.
Have you written a book? You can become a published author with Dorrance Publishing, the nation's oldest publishing services company. Countless authors have trusted Dorrance for nearly 100 years to bring their book to the market. Our professional team will edit your text, design your book pages, and create an appealing, eye-catching custom cover. Plus, our authors benefit from a custom book promotion marketing campaign that makes your book available where people buy books, like Amazon and brick-and-mortar bookstores. So make this free call right now to claim your free author's guide to publishing. Don't wait another day. Take one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a published author and seeing your name in print. You've already written a book, so the next thing to do is make this free call right now to Dorrance Publishing and get your free guide to publishing. Call right now.
Call 800-919-5456. That's 800-919-5456. 800-919-5456.
Everybody wants cheap airfare, but where do you find it? You call Low Cost Airlines. Their prices are direct from the airlines, and they're so low you can't find these fares published anywhere. They specialize in cheap flights, discount hotel rooms, cheap car rental rates, and great package deals anywhere around the world. Wherever you want to go, they can help you get there cheaply and with a best price guarantee. If you want the lowest prices on your airline tickets or other travel services, call now. That's right, call. That's the only way to get these rates. Experts are standing by 24/7 to get you the cheapest airfare and hotel rates available. So don't wait. Call right now for the lowest travel prices anywhere and for great last-minute travel deals too.
Call right now, 800-337-5121. 800-337-5121. 800-337-5121. That's 800-337-5121.
Welcome back to The Seasoned Artist. We're over here in Studio B with James Threalkill, and we're excited to get things started. We're going to let you show us some of your work.
Absolutely. And what we're going to be doing is a composition of a jazz musician using my trusted palette knives. And so we'll get started. Initially, I put my colors down on the palette. And it's like composing. I don't have a set pattern of colors that I use. I just put down colors that I think will contribute to the composition. And then once I start the painting process, you'll see that I just grab color and add it to the composition.
Wonderful. Well, let's let you get started.
All right. Thank you. So initially, I scoop up a color and just add it into the composition. And that's how I begin to layer the colors. And as I was saying during our interview, the colors are put in non-traditional places on the subject. And so I can just go in here and decide where I want to put in color. And then as we proceed with the composition, I start to add colors that will reflect the shadows and the highlights and different things like that. So it's a fun process to go through because it's very similar to a jazz musician who's on stage, improvisation process with his music. And it's pretty much the same thing in terms of just deciding what colors I'm going to use. And so I start adding color at any point in time, and that will bring it together. It's almost like a mosaic of color in actually approaching the piece. And when I'm doing the musicians, I usually start with the face and then the hands that represent the skin tones of the subject matter. And then I'll come back in and start to work on the instrument before finally concluding with its clothes. And so we'll proceed from there. And when I'm doing exhibits, people are just so attracted to the color that it just draws people over to examine. And then it's funny, when they have children with them, of course the kids want to come up and feel the texture, and the parents are like, oh, no, no, no. I said, no, the art is durable. Let them touch it. Let them experience it, you know? And so it's a fun thing to watch them rub their hands against the surfaces and just see the different textures that I've created with the pieces. So as the composition is progressing, you can see I'm starting to put in the tones for the facial features and starting to work down to put color into the hands that's holding on to the instrument. And so that's usually my approach, is getting the hands and the facial features in, and from there I'll work into starting to put the colors into the instrument that the musician is playing, and then subsequently going to the garment that he's wearing. But again, I'm just going through my palette and selecting almost colors at random to add to the composition, and then we'll tie it together as we get into the other areas of the piece. So at this point, I've pretty much gotten most of the tones in for the facial features, and I'm just doing a little bit of detail for the eyelashes and the eyebrows. Can't help but say I'm tempted to say happy little eyebrows, like Bob Ross would say. But from that point, what I'll do is move down to the hand that's on the instrument and start to actually take the same approach in putting in the different colors that'll emphasize the movement of the fingers on the instrument. So at this point, I've gotten in the facial features, gotten the hands in terms of the hand that's manipulating the instrument. And so from this point, I'm ready to go and put in the fabric part of the musician's clothing. But with the instrument and the facial tones and the hands out of the way, you're really into the home stretch of the painting, because you've gotten most of the main subject matter put in. And so now it's a matter of just completing the composition with his clothing, and then I'll come back and put the background color in. But the process is a fun one because it's almost like putting together a puzzle of an individual with the approach that it takes to put the colors in, and then the instrument. And so you can already see how all of those colors work together to add depth to the composition and give it the three-dimensional look that's so prominent in the palette knife pieces. At this point in the composition, we've got the facial features in, the hands on the instrument, the actual instrument, and the clothing that the musician is wearing. And so from this point, we'll move into what I like to call the closing curtain, where you're putting in the background, which is based on the color that you choose, going to accent everything that's been done up to this point. And they have these amazing metallic colors available now where you can really create a background that just actually makes the colors in the composition just stand out that much more. So colors like copper and gold and bronze are some of my favorites to use.
Wow, that's incredible.
Thank you.
It was so neat to watch you do it and bring it to life and go, oh, wow, that's how he does that.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit different than my cartoon here. I finished this pretty quick, but
that's really pretty cool.
We'll just let that go. No, but this is incredible, and we hope that folks will look for Mr. Threalkill's work. And is there some place that they can find your work online? Or
Right, they can find me on Instagram at James Threalkill Arts, and also I have a Facebook page, James Threalkill Arts, and then they can email me at threal89@gmail.com.
Very good.
Thank you all for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you tonight.
Well, thank you for sharing your talent.
My pleasure.
Be sure to watch us next time on The Seasoned Artist.